Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Bethany and I'm doing a series where I will be discussing the different poisonous plants and fungi that you may find in your backyard. If this is something that is of interest to you, please like and subscribe and follow along for more. Now, through these videos I will be doing my makeup. I'm not a makeup artist. I've never claimed to be a makeup artist. It's just something that I do enjoy doing. And as another side note, I'm not a herbologist as well. This is something that I've just found particular interest in, and this is all to do with the research that I have actually found myself. So I'm not claiming to be a herbologist, I'm not claiming to be a makeup artist. This is just something that I'm doing for a bit of fun, and something that I find particularly interesting. So if you would like to follow along, please like and subscribe, and if there's a particular plant or fungi that you'd actually like me to research and make a video on, please leave a comment below. So to start off with today, I will be talking about the Rosary Pea. Now the Latin name for the Rosary Pea is Abrus precatorius, and it is a plant that actually goes by quite a lot of common names. These include jaquirity, crab's eye, John Crowbead, precatory bean is another common one, but I think my favourite is actually giddy giddy, just because it just sounds like a really fun name. Now the Rosary Pea itself is a plant that is a perennial plant, so that means that it grows for more than 2 years, or it lives longer than 2 years. And with the leaves on it, they're called pinnate leafleted leaves. So it means that along like the stem of the leaf, the leaves are actually situated identical on either side. So they follow each other up and they're identical on both sides. They almost look like they're like a fern in a way, but they're actually really feathery to the touch, and they're generally like a dark green to like a grey-green kind of a colour. And on like the ends of the plant where the flowers are, the flowers themselves are actually all kind of clustered together, and they are generally coloured in like white or pink or lavender, and then the seed pods actually hang like directly underneath. So they hang there in like this beautiful green case, almost kind of like they look like they're like snow peas or beans that are hanging there, but that's actually where the seeds themselves are housed. So once flowering season is over, so once pollination season is over, what happens is the seeds that hang underneath actually will go brown, like this really nice dark shade of brown, and then the pods themselves will actually open up, removing the seeds out for everyone to basically see. Now, the seeds themselves for the most common varieties are actually red with a black apex, like this beautiful, beautiful shade of red with a black dot basically at its apex. The less common varieties, however, are white with a black apex, or they will be black with a white apex. But the most common one that you will see is actually the red with the black apex on it. So it's generally found as a native plant to India, but it has been passed around the world. So it does love like tropical and subtropical climates. So think like Asia, Australia, which is where I'm from, as well as like Indonesia, Hawaii, all of those kinds of places. Even in the US as well, it has been found there. In fact, because it is classed as such an intrusive weed, I believe it was actually in Florida. I found out it was actually classed as a Category 1 noxious weed within Florida. So it's not generally well liked all over the world in regards to its growth and its difficulty in being removed. But it is actually a very, very beautiful plant when flowering. So it's I mean, it's been kept as house plants before, as like ornamental house plants. So it is something that, you know, if you could have it like in a pot and keep it away from like other soil, it can be maintained to be like a an ornamental plant, basically. Now, part of the reason that it is classed as an invasive weed is, again, because of its difficulty in removal, but also because the shells are so hard-shelled, they can actually withstand like quite a bit. So it is very difficult to get rid of them from that standpoint. But the shells themselves, because of the nature of how hard they have actually been used in quite a lot of native jewellery. Like they've been used to make like breastplates for breastfeeding mothers. They've been used to create like anklets and bracelets, like in Trinidad in the West Indies. They were used because it was believed that the seed itself would ward off the evil eye. And would also ward off jumbies, so like evil spirits. So there's a lot of mythology. I say there's a lot. There's not like a lot. I couldn't find a huge amount in regards to mythology for it, but I did find a lot in regards to like traditional medicine and that kind of stuff. But before we get into that, I'm going to be talking about the symptoms if you do actually ingest it. So rosary peas is actually very toxic to humans. All parts of the plant are toxic. Because they contain a protein called Abrus, which is very, very similar to ricin in regards to like the symptoms that you experience. Now, some of you may have known ricin or known about ricin from the TV show Breaking Bad. If you haven't watched it, like myself, then you may be aware of ricin just from watching other videos in regards to like plants itself. So ricin actually comes from the castor bean plant, and the castor bean plant is actually what is used to make castor oil. Obviously castor oil is not toxic to you because it goes through a detoxification process. Abrus itself is actually considered to be more toxic than ricin, and ricin is considered to be like one of the most toxic things to people. The reason Abrus is considered more toxic is like the dosage for Abrus poisoning is like 1/75 that of a lethal dose of lethal dose. I can speak. Is 1/75 that of a lethal dose of ricin. So the plant itself, as I said, all parts are quite toxic to people, but if it is ingested, generally the typical symptoms that occur are generally like a couple of hours after ingesting or after ingestion. However, there have actually been some reports of it taking up to 5 days for symptoms to actually start to occur within the body. Now, I'm putting that down to, well, my thoughts on that are actually because if you've eaten the seeds, if you've just swallowed them whole, like that hard shell is possibly protecting your body as well from the poisons being, from the toxin, being released into your body. So, I mean, it still needs to pass through. It may be difficult to do that, but I feel that if you haven't chewed it, then it could be a delayed response from your body and from your system to dealing with that because of the fact that it is, they haven't been chewed or anything like that. Also, please don't actually go and try this out for yourself. If you have this plant, don't go and eat parts of it, and also don't feed it to someone else. Just no. I feel like that should be pretty straightforward, but at the same time, this is also the internet, so I don't want to be like, oh yeah, no, don't do it. So the typical symptoms that you'll receive are nausea, vomiting, severe dehydration, abdominal pain, and you'll also have diarrhea, and that could turn bloody, which, no one wants that. And then you could have hypertension, which is low blood pressure as well, which can occur, which is, not ideal. Now, they're your typical symptoms. So they're the standard ones that you will start to get. And then depending on how severe the poisoning is, you'll then start to experience other symptoms as well on top of that. So further symptoms can also include hallucinations. It can include headache and lethargy. and you can then have seizures on top of that as well, which is scary enough in its own right. And then you can also have blood in your urine as well, which I don't think I know anyone that actually wants to have blood coming out of orifices that it's not supposed to. And then on top of that, Abrin itself can also be made into like a mist or a powder. And that in itself also has a whole host of its own symptoms. Like you can have coughing, you can have lung irritation, you can have eye irritation, and then you can have like, tightness of the chest, difficulty breathing. And then you can actually end up with like lung failure and respiratory failure, which obviously, if you can't breathe, then you're not going to be living. So it's not a poison to really muck around with. So if you do find this plant in your garden, or if you're like going on a walk or something like that, like just don't eat it, don't touch it, just leave it alone, leave it alone. There's a saying we have here in Australia, you don't touch it, it won't touch you. Like just don't touch it, leave it be. Having said that, as I've gone through and I've, said it's been used as ornamental purposes in the home. It's also been used to create jewellery from native cultures. It also has been used as a weapon, not necessarily in like poisoning someone by making them eat it, but the seeds themselves are found. I found a passage, it was in 1898's the King's American Dispensary, and there's a passage in there that I was reading about where the natives of India were creating weapons using the seeds, and they would use them to basically kill cattle, and they were using it to kill cattle so they could secure their hides, because they wanted the hides. Now it did go into what they did to be able to actually do that. Now I'm not going to obviously give all the details away, because there's probably someone out there that's going to be like, oh, I'll make this and use it, but the general gist of it was that they would take about 30 to 40 seeds of the Rosary Pea. They would soak them for about 10 minutes, and then once that had been soaked, they would grind them into a paste. So once grounded down to a paste, they were then rolled into cones, into like sharp pointed cones, and then they were left in the sun to dry so they could retain some of the original hardness of the seeds. Then once that was done, they would go through and they would either like wet it down again, like with a wetting stone, and sharpen them even further if it was required. But then they would actually, again, let it dry. But once it was all dry and done, they would put it in animal grease in the ground and then just leave it overnight. And this animal grease would actually allow it to then become waterproof. So once the cones were then left overnight in the animal fat, they then had a handle attached to it. So it ended up looking something kind of like a cobbler's awl. And it would actually then be used, that's what they would use to then obviously stab the cattle so they could take the hides. Now, the way they had actually made it was that the cone itself, so the spike, was actually sturdy enough to be able to pierce the skin, to be able to pierce into the flesh of the cattle, and it would then actually break off. So it was soft and subtle enough that it would then break. Because what would happen is that whenever someone had tried to, say, take that particular spike out, it was soft enough that it would then just break further. So removal was actually really, really difficult with doing that, and you'd end up with pieces still within the actual bloodstream. So the animal would unfortunately pass, and then obviously they would then take the hide for themselves. Now, that's probably the only kind of weapon I've been able to find that's been made from using the Rosary Pea seed. There has been a lot of like traditional medicine. Now, there hasn't been a huge amount of current study about whether or not the effects of what it was used for were actually beneficial or not, or what it was actually doing to the system. So everything that I found has actually just been based on what it was traditionally used for. I don't really have anything that I've been able to find, like no studies or anything like that, kind of back up these particular traditional medicinal claims. Now, as with most of these types of plants, it would go through a detoxification process. Now, for most plants, that generally involved like boiling it to a certain point or steaming it, and that would actually either eliminate that protein or that toxin completely, or it would bring it down to a point where it was so like minuscule that the effect that it would have on the body would be quite like lessened, like it would almost be non-existent. Now, a lot of the medicinal uses that the plant was used for, and this is like all parts of the plant, it's not just the seeds, which, you know, stay away from them. But the plant itself was actually used to like treat fever. It was used to treat abdominal pain. It was used to treat jaundice. Now that one actually freaked me out because like I have 2 children and I've only ever seen jaundice in children because both of my children had a mild case of it when they were born. And I can't imagine feeding an infant, even though it may have been detoxified, but I can't imagine feeding an infant a toxic, poisonous plant to treat jaundice. I can't really fathom it for an adult, but for a child, I understand obviously like that may have been the only thing that was around at the time, and like it may have worked to some degree, which is why it was continued to be used, but I can't quite fathom that. Like that kind of just blows my mind. But yeah, it was used to treat jaundice. With other ingredients, it was used to treat leukoderma, which is the pigmentation loss on your skin, so the white patches that can appear on the skin due to pigmentation loss. It was used, I believe, as a poultice to treat that, obviously along with other ingredients as well. It was used as a way to remove an unwanted pregnancy, and the roots actually were chewed as a snake bite remedy. Now, as an Australian, I've had a lot of different remedies for snake bites, and chewing a root is definitely a new one. I would not have expected to chew on a root for a snake bite remedy, so that one was new. But with Abrus poisoning itself, like there isn't actually an antidote at the moment. So if you do accidentally eat the seeds, or if your child accidentally eat the seeds, if you have this around the place, like if there's anything like that, you will need to go to a hospital, because without an antidote, they can really manage the symptoms that do occur. So, you know, if you start having abdominal pain, if you can't keep anything down or keep anything in, like it just keeps coming out, they have the equipment and the capable hands to be able to, you know, make sure that you have fluids, make sure you can like kind of help get rid of it from your body. So if there is anything like that, you will need to go to a hospital. I highly recommend going to a hospital. But yeah, that's the current situation with it at the moment. So there's no antidote. It's got a really interesting history, and I actually really quite enjoyed researching this one. So I thought it was quite a fun one. So that's the end of the video at the moment, guys. So if you have any questions, or if you have a particular plant or fungi that you want me to research for you, please leave a comment below. Hit that like button, please subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one. Stay safe. See you later.